Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. With me today is another legend all the way from Launceston. It is Sam Cassidy, and he is the owner of Sky Podiatry. So, Sam, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks, Tyson. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for saying yes. This all came about when I saw a recent ad that was posted for a job position in Tasmania, which I will admit was the funniest one I've ever seen for a job position, which we will touch on a little bit later, because I just think it was really unique. It stood out, and a lot of people know a bit about Tasmania, but I love the way you twisted a few things in there, which remind me of why Tasmania is a beautiful place.
Yeah, no, it's we've definitely got some challenges down here, and it's definitely led us to have to think outside the box, which has brought us to this ad. So it was fun to do.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. Are you actually from Tasmania yourself, or how did you end up down there? Well,
Yeah,
how
so
did you get into
definitely.
podiatry though? How did you get into podiatry first before getting to Tasmania?
Well, I'm one of those two-headed Tasmanians. I was born here, but I didn't actually know what podiatry was when I first got started. And like every Tasmanian does, they have this idea of got to get off the island, do something, and I actually wanted to be a radiographer. And
Okay.
I wanted to be at the University of Newcastle and was filling up the last slots on my UAC entrance sheet. And lo and behold, had the website up and podiatry is there. Turned to mum, said, "That's feet." She said, "Yeah." And I said, "All right,
I
put it on
love
there."
that. Sweet. What could
Before
happen?
taking a gap year, got an email saying, "Check your preferences." By that point, I realised I didn't want to be an engineer, didn't want to be a dietitian, a dentist,
Yeah.
or a hygienist. And through sheer laziness, podiatry rolled from number 9 on my application sheet to number 3, just because I moved everything else down. And yeah, got an offer for it. Moved, relocated, and the
To
rest is
Melbourne,
history.
I assume you went from to
So court.
Latrobe.
No, I went to University of Newcastle, so
Okay.
jumped on the ship. So the reason I picked Newcastle was really because they had a great radiography program at the time, and I'd always been a little bit of a left field creative. Probably didn't put as much attention into certain things at school, so I didn't quite get the ATAR that you needed to get into that. So I kind of thought podiatry, it's a good stepping stone. You get in there, if you do all right in your first year, it opens options.
Mm.
And so yeah, jumped on the Spirit of Tasmania, 12-hour drive up to the central coast of New South Wales, and we're in the thick of it. So got a bit of a rude shock when it wasn't Newcastle and it wasn't Sydney. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere at the
Yeah.
Newcastle's Rimba campus, but it taught me a lot about myself, and had a lot of big growth at that time to sort of everything I take on now around, 110%, and going from there.
Okay, so when you did your podiatry studies there, you would have, after a number of years, did you think about, oh, I'm never going back to Tasmania now that I'm in Newcastle? I'm loving this warmer weather. I don't want to go back to Tasmania. Or was it always the plan? You love Tasmania and that's where you wanted to be?
It was never the plan. I suppose when I first left, I thought I'd probably get back there straight away. But in my final year, I did some placement in Queensland. I actually moved further away from home, so I actually
Okay.
moved to Brisbane and sort of Redcliffe area, and that's where I met my wife. And it was I actually then moved back to New South Wales to do some research again at the University of Newcastle, but to also do some work at Balmain Sports Medicine. So it was a push came to shove when it came back to moving back to Tassie. We're planning to get married in Tassie, and we thought it'd be easy to organise a wedding being there.
Yeah.
And that was really that thought process. It wasn't anything about where do we want to be. It was just ease of lifestyle.
Oh, but
And
that happens. That happens though.
yeah,
If anyone had told me, I studied in Brisbane at QUT, went straight to the Gold Coast, always born and bred southeast Queensland. There's no way I'm ever going to leave this place. And I just came up to Cairns for a drive, and 30 years later, I'm still here.
yeah.
So it was never part of the plan. It just sort of worked out the way. Side question: since you got out of Tasmania for a certain period of time, spent time in New South Wales and in Queensland, did we convert you to rugby league?
Funnily enough, I always followed league.
Oh,
As a
okay.
kid, um, as a kid, I actually played the real football. So I played
Soccer. You
soccer.
you played soccer.
I was primarily a swimmer. I was
Yeah.
probably a better swimmer than I was, but I thrived more in team sports. And so I almost at one point went over and trialled in the UK, but thought better of it for various reasons. But yeah, no, I've always followed rugby league from a distance. Definitely when I was
Okay.
in New South Wales and Queensland. I keep a bit closer tabs on it at the moment. Unfortunately, a Cronulla Shark supporter, so
Yeah.
don't know.
So you at a given point, then you decide we're going to go to Tasmania, ease to get married.
Yep.
But then once you got down there, did you realize how nice the place was, or reminded you of how nice it was?
Yeah, probably took about a year to get back in the flow of it. Got married, bought a house, kind of like, all right, this is fairly easy. And within that sort of first year to 18 months, we actually had our first kid, and that was really when it struck home of just how easy is this? How good is it?
Mm.
You know, we were 7 minutes from the city centre to all the coffee shops. We could, you could drive to the mountains where there was some pretty terrible snow if you really wanted to. It'd take an hour. Everything was in arm's reach.
Yeah.
And worst comes to worst, you jump on a plane and you spend 45 minutes on a plane, you get to Melbourne, and a lot of people do it. They're in the thick of it for the weekend. So they fly over Friday night, last flight out, spend all weekend there, get the last flight out on a Sunday, which is sort of like 9, 10 o'clock. And you've spent the whole weekend in Melbourne for one night's accommodation and probably $100 in airfares. And so, it never felt like we're missing out on too much.
It's like best of both worlds.
Yeah. I think there's been a couple of stories in the US of people commuting for work, and they live miles away and they fly to work every day purely because it's cheaper than living there.
Yeah, well, but I know, like even being here in Cairns, what you're talking about, Tasmania, is almost exactly the same thing as Cairns, except there's a slight temperature difference.
Yeah.
And when gone back down to Southeast Queensland a number of times, yeah, holidays, catch up with family. And when I'm sitting in the car for an hour and a half just to get 15 kilometers, and you go, my God. And then you get back to Cairns and you drive from the airport, 25 kilometers back home, and you've done it in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
You sort of go, yeah, now I remember why I love living up here. Just the simplicity. But Tasmania, though, is absolutely gorgeous place. I've only ever been there once, was there for 2 weeks. And yeah, beautiful. Cold, but beautiful.
Yeah. But funnily enough, there was patches over summer where we had higher temperatures than Brisbane. So
Yeah.
we had weeks of 30 degrees. So you still in summer you get it. It's a little bit later on. So summer starts in that probably late December, probably more early January, but then lasts a little bit longer through into sort of to late March. So it's a little bit of a later summer. We'll still get those high temperatures, and but like on the weekend we had 18 and 20 degree days, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful sun, just awesome, light breeze. You can do everything you want in it, and you're not too hot, you're not too cold, and it's just easy.
Yeah, the one thing I did notice when we were in Tasmania, the temperature was really steady though. Like if you woke up in the morning, it was cool. It just stayed, it didn't vary too much. It was actually really, once you got dressed for the day, it was pleasant the whole day. Whereas like Melbourne, I've been in Melbourne and it was like 30 degrees 1 minute, and next minute it just started hailing, then rained, and then the temperature dropped from 30 down to about 12. Then this breeze picked up, and you go, my God. And they talk about the 4 seasons in one day.
That's Melbourne.
Yeah, and Canberra's been the same. You wake up in the morning, it's -2 in the morning, and then it'll be 20 degrees during the day. And there's such a fluctuation.
Definitely. Yeah, no, Tassie's good like that. It's nice and consistent. If it's cold, it's cold, and you can put a jacket on, but
Yeah,
you're going to be, as long as you get those layers right first thing in the day, you're sorted for the rest of it.
yeah. So I definitely will say one thing. If you enjoy cooler weather, I think Tasmania's a good place to be, or just like a nice climate. When did you decide to set up Sky Podiatry? Was that straight away when you moved down there, or did you work for somebody else first?
Jumped around a bit first. So first moved to Launceston, took a job that I wasn't particularly happy with. I didn't stay there too long. I think it was less than a month. And this was just around the honesty of advertising, I think, and it sort of started me on a thought process. I think I'd always wanted to be in business or do something, but I actually then commuted to Devonport for 18 months from Launceston. So I moved from Sydney to get away
Yeah.
from commuting, and then started commuting again. And
What was the
so
drive? How long did you have
it's about
the
100
distance?
kilometers. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
talking, yeah, about an hour. It's all freeway, or freeway, country
Yeah.
highway. Um, so a lot of Tasmanians thought that was just pretty stupid. And what really pushed me to open Sky Podiatry was that a couple of close calls on that commute. We're talking within 20, 25 meters of having a head-on collision, like really close, like you could feel the air. And that happened in the space of 1 week. I think I had 4, and that was just other idiots on the road. So had a baby on the way, and it's like, cannot be doing this drive. And then we got to look at other options, and
And
I
did you
didn't
say
really
you did
know.
that for 18 months?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, it's a long time. Yeah.
So I didn't really know what we wanted to do, and the hard question I always had was, if you could do anything, what would you do? Like, take away any barriers. You want to be a doctor, you want to be an astronaut. If you could do anything, what could you do? And I always found it really hard that I couldn't answer that question honestly.
It's a
I
good
don't
question,
know.
though.
I still don't know if someone just gave me an opportunity and I could do it, what would it be?
A really good question.
No idea. Zero. So I then started reflecting. I looked on, what do I enjoy doing? I enjoy coffee. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Apart from those tea drinkers.
Yeah, there's always one of them. All the English people in the UK will be listening to this episode and going, how dare you pick on this whole country of tea drinkers?
But the core thing that I always came back to is I love baking, love cooking. I catered my whole wedding. I groomzilled it, catered it.
Oh my God, you're Groomzilla.
Yeah, it was a bit weird actually.
Yeah, there could be a
My wife
TV
said
show on that.
she wanted something, a certain look, and she showed me some pictures, and I can make that, and we did everything. So it was a cool experience. But even as a kid, my dad was a fitters machinist and an engineer, and so he was always in the workshop building things and making things with our hands, and it's sort of evolved that the one thing I really enjoyed doing was building. So building something. It didn't really matter what the context was. Was it food? Was it an arts project or something like that? I did graphic design through years 11 and 12. And so I kind of went, well, what can I build? How can I make a business out of that? I don't think I'm necessarily cut out for being a tradie of any ilk. And so it came down to building a business.
Okay.
And I reached out to my uncle who's been successful over his years with probably more in the sort of the adventure capitalist type of realm or investing in opportunities. He's a PhD in chemistry and geology, so he's worked a lot in developing mine sites. So I actually reached out to him and went and spent a week with him to see what he does and his sort of realm would be sort of his wealth creation is how he sort of terms it.
Yeah.
And that we met a health group. We flew to Sydney, and then he had one of his friends come down or business partners, and he said, "What are you doing tomorrow? Let's fly to the Gold Coast. We've got something that we're working on. Would like to have a look at, get some input." And there was one comment that was made on that day. It was kind of everyone was talking about their experiences and where they'd been, where they'd come from, and it wasn't to make me feel insignificant at all. But one of the things that they then said was they turned to me and they said, "What have you done? Like, what have you done across your life?" And I'd been thinking about business ownership and building things for a little bit. And I said, yeah, probably, I've been the weekend manager at Woolworths. I've always just taken that initiative to be proactive in any job I've worked and always, treat it like my own. But why haven't I taken this step to be, the entrepreneur? Not that I like that word.
Yeah.
But essentially that's the question. And I walked away from that meeting not feeling insulted, but almost kicking myself of going, what have I done? So that's where it went, okay, we're going to do this. Then I had that near miss on the highway, and that's where the process started. Podiatry seemed like a pretty good content to build from, being a podiatrist myself and generally thinking I'm okay at it. Worst comes to worst, if nothing comes of it, then I can just be a podiatrist for myself, be a sole trader for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But the goal was always to move away from being a podiatrist, and my sort of 10-year goal has been in 10 years to not be seen as a podiatrist, but to be seen as a business owner, to be someone that's in business who builds things.
That's
And
good though. I like that philosophy because I used to get frustrated all the time. This is going back, say, 20 years ago. Won the Telstra Business Award. I remember when I won that. It was 20 years ago too. And at the time, I was getting so much shit hung on me by other podiatrists who were saying, "Oh, you're just a business owner. You're not a podiatrist." Yeah, a real podiatrist wouldn't have a business like that. I'm going, "You're an idiot." And the thinking has changed a lot over the years. But what used to frustrate me was in the business world in Cairns, people would look at me as a podiatrist, not a business owner.
Yeah.
But then people in the profession would look at you, you're a business owner, not a podiatrist. And you just sit there down the middle and go, well, why can't you be both? Why can't you be a business owner, but your product is podiatry?
Yeah, agreed.
So it's good you've headed down that path. And I love the way that it was like you can remember the conversation that you were having with that group of people that sparked the thought in your mind. And nearly everybody I know that has a successful podiatry practice has had or has come across or been involved in one of those conversations, which has made them think, which has been the catalyst. Not necessarily, I'm going to set my own business because my boss was a wanker.
Yeah, it's the wrong reason to start a business.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's hard in business. I think my general view on it, unless you want to be in business, don't be.
Yeah.
You'll just become a grumpy sole trader, creating a poor environment for whoever works there. And what will end up happening is we're just going to facilitate that burnout rate that sits there in podiatry at the moment. So
yeah, well, but somebody else refers to them as accidental business owners.
yeah, yeah. And you've got to at some point make that decision to embrace it, to become the business owner. If you're always, resentful of being a business owner, then it's always going to be a hard slog. And you probably should be asking yourself, what do I want out of life?
Yeah, well, there's two things you've already said about asking yourself those questions. What if there were no limitations? If you could do anything, what would you do? And if I was asked that question, my answer would be I like creating stuff.
Yeah.
Not building, but creating. So the podcast, writing a book, taking something that doesn't exist and turning it into something that does exist, but helps other people at the same time.
100%. It's good.
So I reckon if everybody needs to ask themselves the question. Also, I think it's important, if you never want to have your own business, don't have your own business and become the best employee in the world and be highly sought after and paid a lot of money.
Yeah, because you can be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was talking to another podiatrist recently and he said he'll have people approach him about, oh, have you got any work? Or he will put a thing out there about employment. He says, I want people to come to me and sell me on them. If they approach him for a job, you go, don't just come and say you want the job. Show me, what are you? You've been working for 10 years. What are your conversion rates in different areas? What are your KPIs? What is your rebooking rate? He said, it's not just about you and your knowledge. It's also about you as an employee. How good are you?
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is, obviously you've written a book on, all of these things. I probably come at it a little bit of difference. I look at the numbers from looking at best care and going, what's the best model of care? A rebooking rate is purely just saying that we're rebooking the patient as and when they need review and requirements of that.
Yeah, if they need it. Yeah, not rebooking for the hell of rebooking.
Yeah. And I would argue that, there's only a few circumstances that there isn't a requirement to do that. Someone comes in, first presentation's got an ingrown toenail. They just want conservative care. You clip it out. You probably should be touching base with that person in some way, shape, or form.
Definitely.
In the next week to make sure it's resolved. Because if it hasn't resolved, then you need to implement a solution for that. If you don't, that's bad business because you didn't fix the problem. They haven't got the value out of the service, and it sort of all perpetuates. So there's only a few circumstances I actually see generally across the board that a rebooking is not required. And I think it's the understanding of the why that's important. And I think a lot of the time as business owners, we probably go too much about, oh, that's about this number here, which is going to generate, and they're thinking money, money, money. Whereas no, it's actually about patient care. It's not about money, it's about patient care. Our business is built on care and empathy and having that good patient care model there is important. but it also then helps to protect us from empathy fatigue and other things like that. Because if we're providing better care, we're going to be getting better results, which means that we're going to have better satisfaction out of our work. But we're also going to be catching those little issues at appropriate time points, which means that we're not going to be getting those nasty ones that come in where people blow up and you feel like you're the worst podiatrist in the world.
Yeah.
Purely because you feel that your confidence is taking a hit as your competence is, and they're not in line. I'm a really strong believer that, every new grad is going to have, really, they're going to start pretty lacking self-confidence and low competence, and it's going to increase, but confidence will accelerate far before their competence will. And then there's going to be a hit to the system where their confidence really takes a dive. And if we're not there to support them with good procedures and pathways, reviewing, rebooking rates, all these things help to buffer that journey.
Yeah.
And essentially get those two things coming up on an equal trajectory where our competence is always very much in line with our confidence.
There's a really good diagram I saw. I cannot remember the name of the diagram.
Yeah, I've got it on my Instagram. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I actually got it on my desktop here somewhere. And normally it sits there, and it's like a confidence competence matrix of where they actually cross over.
It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's the one. So everyone needs to go and look that up. It's quite interesting.
And I think that's, I think it's really important to know that as any sort of supervising podiatrist, business owner, anything like that, that just because you're bringing in staff that have 10 years of experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that those levels within your business will reflect the same. Because
I think that's what that podiatrist is getting to too. He says it's not about how many years you've been in practice. It's about your confidence and competence in certain aspects. And like, I hate hearing stories when I hit a new graduate say, I was working at some corporate company and they were getting, if I wasn't doing 20 pairs of orthotics a month, they were coming down on me. I'm going, yeah, but if you're not getting the type of patients that you would even get close to getting 20 pairs a month, I said, how can they punish you for doing that? And they're going, and they felt so much pressure that it made them hate their work. They didn't like their job. Their confidence was dropping.
KPI should always be based around a why, and
definitely.
Why should be led back to patient care.
Yeah, well, you mentioned my book. The part that's interesting about the book is at no stage in the book do I talk about money.
Yeah,
and that's the funny part. When the book came out, people go, "Oh, how can you call it? There's no secret. There's money in podiatry." I'm going, well, if you look after the patients, there is. If you don't look after the patients and you don't look after your business, then there isn't. So the book itself is not really about money. It's about looking after the patients.
Yeah.
So once let's move back onto your practice. You set up Sky Podiatry. How many years have you had it for now?
27th of November this year will be 4 years.
Okay. And it's steadily grown over that 4-year period?
Yeah, steadily grown. I think for some people looking outside in, it might seem a little bit of a rapid growth compared to some. We've got 2 clinics now based both in Launceston. We started with a really dinky, 92 square meters. We've now got 210 squares and 176 squares at different sites. We've done full renovations and fit outs to be specific to what we want in our brand image. So inside it's felt like it's actually been a lot longer journey, but I think when you reflect back on it being 4 years, I'd say our growth has been steady, but very much probably rapid in a lot of ways.
Okay, so with business ownership, what's been the biggest thing that surprised you about having your own business, and what's been like the biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge has definitely been learning to become a leader, not a podiatrist.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably been one of those ones. Biggest thing that surprised me, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think there's been so many in such short a time that there's not been one sort of great epiphany of, hey, that's a real takeaway.
Yeah.
I think what it has done for me is it's really consolidated that being in this type of environment is where I want to be. So I've always supported my staff in the way of opportunities. So what it solidified for me is that when I did take this step, that it went, no, this is what I wanted to do. And I don't think you really know if it's for you until you do it. Like if you have an idea and you've worked through some of those risk mitigation strategies and you go, no, this is what I think I want to do, then the only way you're going to ever find out is by taking the step.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
And I I was pretty confident that it was what I wanted to do, but I wasn't 100%. So I think that was a really interesting thing, how doing it can actually solidify it or break it apart. And there's been various times across my life that's been the case. But that was something we then took through into our business, was to give every person within our business an opportunity, regardless if they're administration to a podiatrist to, whatever that is opportunities has always been at its core. And that may even be with our podiatrists or other staff moving outside our business. So I think Richard Branson has a saying that you teach your staff to do everything and support them to do everything, but then you treat them to never want to leave.
Yeah.
So that really sort of rang true a lot. So, if any of my staff ever wanted to take the step and open their own practice, I would actually be there to talk it through with them and go along that journey. And we have, so which is really cool. It's an interesting thing. And, it's not just smoke and mirrors. I genuinely care. And I know that I was in that position and the opportunities and that those life goals for the people that come in has been some of the whys that I actually do this.
Yeah.
Is because I'm not actually just building a business. I like building things. I also like helping people build their lives. I might only have a small part of it, but I definitely want to be contributing to it in a positive way than in a negative.
I think it's a good point. Even with the podcast, you'll get emails all the time from people who say, oh, I listened to this guest on this topic. And they'll be students and they're going, I was going to give up podiatry until I heard that. And this has changed the way I'm going to do things. And you don't know where that person's going to end up in their career. And knowing that it was that episode or that comment or that one little thing that you said totally changed it.
I think it's been more self-learnings than it has been about business learnings in our journey so far, which has been good, because I think I needed it at the time, because I didn't really know where I was going.
So knowing what you know now, if you were asked that question, if you could do anything, what would you do? Would you be going, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing?
Good question. I'd still be in business.
Yeah.
There would be some core changes to the content or the contextualization of what that business might look like. Would it be podiatry practices? Would it be healthcare? That's a very interesting question.
Yeah. Well, it's always good in hindsight. If I set up another podiatry clinic tomorrow, it would look nothing like any podiatry clinic I'd ever done before, just through experience.
Yeah, I think I would probably move away from healthcare if I was to start something now. And I'd look for probably more into that sort of tech space realm, more so, and sort of e-commerce side of things, with the fundamental on more what the business basics are built on. So scalability in terms of growth without having put on additional staff. For instance, in a podiatry practice, if you want to increase revenue, you generally need to increase patient load or increase total spend per patient. But you also then, there's a threshold, if you have your core beliefs of not overworking staff, that there's a threshold of how many patients that podiatrist can see in a year. So having flexibility on that, of going, well, things can scale. So it may be, online trainings and things like that, where they're almost, pay per view or pay per click type of things. So more certain aspects, and then looking at the sort of the skill set that's required. Healthcare at the moment, especially in Tasmania, is extremely difficult to find professionals.
Yeah.
So looking at industries or services that we can provide where there's still a level of training that needs to be provided, because that's where you're going to, really sort of make your mark and be that point of difference. But making it so it's not, you're probably looking at areas where you're not needing a 4 to 5 year bachelor's degree just to find a staff member. So for me, the business, I don't know what it would be, but
Yeah.
it would be looking more to what the way that the business would operate. Because I think for me, it would give me some interesting levers to pull around, scalability, marketing, cause and effects, which is really what interests me in the building phase at the moment. Whereas we're probably having to halt our phase of growth because of just staffing. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
difficult. So there's a lot of different advertising campaigns that we want to roll out and different booking structures, but we just can't do it right now because we don't have the staffing to do it. And
Yeah.
we've got 4 podiatrists, we've got an orthotic lab. Like, we don't really need to do much more. We could just sit, we could just sit tight and be happy with where we are. But then I would not be working on the fundamentals of giving all my staff opportunities to grow and do other things. So one of our core values is becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, because growth equals change.
Yep.
And so that's one of those things, it's got to hold true to ourselves. And I don't sit well being stagnant. I like to be moving forwards. So yeah, in terms of business, it wouldn't be healthcare, or if it was in healthcare, it'd probably be more around the technology side of things, where there's a scalability and the skill sets of individuals are more trained within the business rather than developed at university level.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Anyone who's listening to this who's thinking about leaving podiatry, that's not what we're saying.
No.
Just pointing that out. It's really just a hypothetical, knowing what you know. If you could change direction, what would you do? But yeah, I think podiatry. I was talking to my brother, he's a dentist, and he's got 4 kids. I said, "Are you encouraging any of your children to get in healthcare?" And he went, "No." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "It's hard work." He said, "They're not cut out for it." I said, "Okay." And my daughter's doing pharmacy, and and she's going to be. I think she's going to be fantastic at it. I don't have a problem so much with healthcare. But it's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything like you're saying, when you're dealing with patients and you're dealing with 10, 15, 20 patients a day and all different emotional levels, and you're going to go up and down with them on top of your staff, your family, you actually do take on a lot yourself. And that's why I think it's important that you've got to be in an environment like your work environment sounds pretty relaxed and chilled out. And I think that is like really important. I love stress, but only to a point, only if I'm creating it.
Yep.
Like I couldn't work for some podiatry clinics I know where they cramming patients in, day out. I understand a business has got to make profits, but not at my health. I don't
No.
think it's that. I don't think it's that important.
No. That was, yeah. Fundamentally, you shouldn't be selling yourself like that. I mean,
No,
we
and
set
there's a
out.
lot of good jobs out there. I
Yeah.
mean, there's people that are working for absolute tyrants who don't like it. They're getting overworked. They feel they're underpaid. They're stressed out. They want to leave the profession. But then there's a whole pile of other people who are great employers who've got fantastic jobs in nice locations. You just got to match. Just got to marry the two together. Which leads me on to a video I saw recently, and it had this wine guy on there. Happened to be you. Can you take us through? Now, if nobody has seen the ad, I'm going to try and get a copy of it and put a link in the show notes so people can actually go to and watch it. It was great. I had a bit of a chuckle. Only goes for 1 minute and 17 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, trying to live our core values as a business. One of them is left field creative. So just kind of looking at alternative options, and you can develop a business as well as you want, but you've still got to be able to sell it. You've still got to generate attention. And the whole idea of the ad was just to create conversations. That was it. It wasn't supposed to, and it's done that. There's been a lot of people engage with it on Facebook, which is great. But it was it was a bit of an idea that I'd sort of been thinking about. And one of my patients is actually a national comedian, and I've kind of voiced it to her, and she said, "I like the context." And so I said, "I want to be good at this in terms of this creative script writing and rolling down that side." I said, "Would you be happy to look at a bit of a script?" So we actually worked together to put that together, and then and we went from there, and we got a group of people to come and film it, just to first time out, just to make sure that it came across polished enough.
Yeah, how many takes did it take? Because she looked so confident in front of that camera that it just rolled, everything just rolled off your tongue really easily. It looked like it was a one take thing that you actually read through, even though you probably botched it up a few at the beginning, maybe.
We did 3 takes total.
Okay.
So that was the last one. And I think that was the second one all the way through. And the only bit that we added on at the end was when I cracked the bottle of wine.
Okay.
We just made sure that we were happy with what we got before we cracked a bottle of Pinot to finish off.
So what I'm going to ask, with your permission, even though, okay, this is a podcast, so someone can't see it, if they go to the show notes, they can click on the link and watch a video. Yeah. But is that okay if I strip the audio out of
out
of the video and I add it to this podcast? So if anyone who's listening to the podcast now, right about now, I'm going to play the audio. So they would have already just heard the audio, and I think they'll now understand a little bit more about the ad that you put together. What I really liked about it, and I've said this to people so many times, coaching clients, sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Yeah.
You got to, why do you live where you live, and why is it so awesome? If you cannot answer that question and you can't sell people on that, then it's going to be really tough to find people. You not only sold the sizzle instead of the steak, you made it funny. That was what I liked about it.
Trying very hard, and I must admit it was a bit daunting when I submitted it, and I must admit I reached out to Scotty Greenbank before I submitted it, and I'm going, do we think we're on the money? And thankfully I've got a lot of positive feedback. So
there'll be some people that will listen to it and go, oh, that's so unprofessional. Yeah, but they're not the sort of person that's going to come and work with you anyway.
100%. And that's what you've got. I think we've got to realize, if you've got to find those right fits. That's us. That's our workplace. We like to have a bit of fun. We're professional within the clinic, as you are with health professionals, but you've also got to be yourself. It becomes incredibly taxing otherwise. So I think you're exactly right in that, people won't be applying for a job where they see that and they just don't resonate with it. On the other side of it, you see all the same job ads coming up time after time. And for anyone that does watch that ad and thinks that maybe they're in the crosshairs, if you actually look back at any of my other job ads, they're taking the piss out of myself, because every one of those things we've done the opposite way. In terms of, we've asked people to be the next superstar podiatrist, and it's kind of leaning into people's ego when, actually just being you is enough for us. We want you to be you, which I think is really important to getting the most out of an individual in terms of in their growth and their sort of professional development, because otherwise they're just going to burn out and empathy is just going to dissolve and become bitter and twisted.
Yeah, but I do think it's just I think it's important for any employee they have to be themselves. So therefore they know whether they're a good match with the employer. And I think sometimes some employees think they'll put on this fake thing that, I'll pretend I'm this when I'm at work, but this is what I'm really like when I'm out of work.
Yeah.
And you can only hide that for so long. I had a young guy that was working for me who, very professional in the clinic, total idiot outside of the clinic, but being an idiot just caught up with him.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, but that's life. But your ad, what I liked about it most was, and I wrote down a couple of things here, was probably more along the lines of you made a twist with everything that is positive about Tasmania, but you tried to turn it into a negative.
Yep.
And it sort of just looped around, like, you're not going to be able to listen to podcasts as much because you won't be sitting for an hour and a half in traffic every day.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, see, that's a negative, but with a positive. And it was, your friend, people will troll you or say things about all the glorious photos that you constantly post on social media. I thought it was fantastic. And you may even become a wine wanker. And I'm watching the wine, and I'm thinking, please say something wanky. And you didn't disappoint.
And also the sort of the Matt Preston styled suit with the pocket handkerchief. I was trying to amp up that.
Oh, I didn't notice that part, so I'm not going to watch that because I was so focused on what you were actually saying. I noticed the wine, and I was concentrating on the words that you were saying. I didn't look so much at what you were actually wearing, but
Yeah,
probably I'll
a
look
very
back now.
pretentious suit jacket.
But it was just it was a great ad, and it was that ad that when I saw you post that, that I went, I need to get you on here to talk about it because I think a lot of podiatrists can learn from it, and there's also a lot of employees that listen to the podcast. So hopefully they listen to the podcast, they go and hunt down that ad, or they would have already listened to it before, and you get inundated with people wanting to work in Tasmania.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those big things. Just be yourself.
Yep.
Don't be a sheep. So be a leader. That's what we're designed to be. With business owners, I mean, you're inherently at the front of the pack already. You're inherently at the front of the line. All you got to do is take the first step and be a leader. And just, the only way you can do that is by being you.
Yep.
And then that's giving the honesty for all the people who are going to be looking in for those ads to either want to step up and be a part of it, or maybe make a pretty clear decision. And in every situation, you're either going to get a great employee, or you're going to have someone that's still equally great go, it's not for me, and step away.
Yeah.
But that allows you to find the next great person to step into the position, because hiring the wrong person because they think that they'll be a great fit, maybe because you haven't been yourself, is going to end up in tears on both sides of it.
Yeah. Have you done that before? Have you employed the wrong person yet?
I think we've had some staff come and go, not too many, which
Yeah.
has been nice. But I think I don't necessarily they were the wrong employees. They definitely weren't wrong. They were right at the time. And I think just the wants of either the practice or the individual changed. So we went in different directions. So
Yeah. But it's one of those things. But I remember someone telling me once that, yeah, the team members you have with you that take your business from, say, 0 to 400,000 or 500,000 will probably not be the same team members that may take you to 1 million or beyond. And some people are more suited to a smaller practice, one owner, you there working with them. And as they grow, that growth may not suit them. And they know it's now time to move on to somebody else who's at that growth stage, not the real expansion side of things. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's with our last few changes. That's probably one individual wanted to go and do their own thing, and we've had conversations with them, and we're helping them through that process. But it was our next steps of going, well, what's next? Growth is change, and fundamentally, people don't like change.
Yeah,
it's exciting and it creates a lot of opportunities, but it can be stressful if you're constantly rolling through change. So I think also just knowing yourself is really important, and trying to be, I suppose, in tune or in line, or having conversations frequently with your staff allow you to work through those steps.
No, I agree with you 100%. So is there anything else you want to finish on before we wrap up?
No.
Nah.
So look, the biggest thing for me is always, people might think I'm a little bit blasé about podiatry, because I've always said I don't want to be a podiatrist. I'm fundamentally passionate about the profession and it being done right, but I'm also fundamentally passionate about the health and well-being of every individual, whether or not it be one of my staff members or another podiatrist at another clinic or administration staff. We've got real issues within healthcare as itself with huge amounts of empathy fatigue. And I think everyone can take a second to reflect on their own practices. Even if you're the podiatrist, you're thinking on yourself. There are things that you can do and change to make yourself sustainable as an individual. The more sustainable that you are, the happier you'll be, the better the employee you'll be. And I really urge people to take that into account, because, if we keep going the way we're going, healthcare as a whole is going to get a whole lot harder. And we need to take care, because we get a lot of good young talent, and even people that have been in the profession for quite a while just burning out and tapping out. And that's a lot of skill sets that we're losing, and we should be really doing everything we can to try and mitigate all of those risks of burnout. And so, yeah, fundamentally look after yourself, number one, so that you can look after others. Because if you're not 100%, it's going to be very, very obvious to all the patients you're going to be treating.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great tip to finish on. So, Sam, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing part of your story, your wisdom, and talking about your job advertisement, which is one of the best ones I've ever seen. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyson. Appreciate it.